Question one, a 3D shape is shown below. Now, this is a very common visual reasoning question where you'll look at 3D shapes and they'll ask you to take a look at the top view, side view, any of that. So when you approach this question, it's really important that you take a look at what the question is asking. So here, I noticed that it's saying that we want a shape from above. That's the key point here. So the way I try to look at it is, okay, you're a little bird and you're here trying to look downwards at the shape. And when you look at the shape, there has to be a few things that, stick out to you. So for example, when I look at the shape, I see a lot of rectangular boxy shapes, and that's what sticks out to me. So first, I'm going to notice that, okay, here are the boxes. So I've just colored that in. And then I see some other shapes in between. So I'm just going to keep that in mind, because here it's not just the number of shapes, but the orientation that matters. So here I've kept a note that this is like the boxy shapes. I should see like something in a bit of an L pattern here. And then in between, I should see a more rectangle type shape, which is in between these two, like this. And sorry, in terms of boxes, I also mean like a square. As you can see, it seems a bit more squarish compared to the rest. So this is the sort of pattern we're looking for. So when I move on to A, B, C, and D, I'm just going to quickly take a look at each of the shapes there. So I can see that, okay, when we look at A, we have these squares, and then we also have these rectangles here. And that looks like a really good match to what we have here. So I think A is pretty good, but we're just going to check all the other options before moving on. So I think another important thing to note is that B, C, and D, well, the shape is actually like an L shape. And depending from what angle, you look at this shape from, it can look like an L shape like this or this. So I think you cannot eliminate these shapes, A, B, C, or D, based on, I guess, which way the L looks. I think the best way to do this is just look at, I guess, the square versus the rectangle shapes. So just going through B, the way I would look at this is I would see the square shapes like this, and then the rectangles like this. But one thing that's really sticking out to me is that these two shapes are together, and they're not meant to be. Because as we can see in this shape here, there's a blue thing in the middle, which is how I feel taking note of which shape is where really helps. And I'm just going to repeat this for C and D. So with C, I noticed that, okay, we've got, first of all, the number of shapes there is incorrect. We should see 3 red, but instead we've got 4 like boxy shapes here and only 1 like, little rectangle. And also the 3 boxy shapes are in a row, the 3 squares. And I think that is incorrect. So always compare it back to what we have there. And just looking at our last one, we've once again got 2 in a row, and that's incorrect. This shape is also unusual. We haven't really seen something like this before. And moving on to the rectangular shapes, there's a few here, but I think the main issue with this one is this shape here. I haven't seen it before, and these two together. So because of that, I can eliminate B, C, and D, and that is why I choose A. So I think a key tip I have for thinking skills is always try to eliminate your, always try to eliminate the bad answers. So in this case, that would be B, C, and D. Alrighty, I'll just adjust my camera so you can see me better. Okay. Alrighty, I hope this question makes sense. Moving on to question number 2. So the 290 bus route from Pinkerton Station to Westmoreland Station only stops at major stations. Alrighty. So this person boards it at Pinkerton and gets off at the second last stop. So my number 1 tip for this, honestly, for any of thinking skills or maths at this point, if you can, draw a diagram. Now, I know in a high pressure, high timing situation like thinking skills, where you've got 40 minutes for 40 questions, it does seem a little bit nerve-wracking to, spend time writing. But I think for certain questions like this, drawing a diagram instead of reading through the answers and going back to the question, reading the answers and seeing if there's a match, I think drawing a diagram will really help you understand that, especially with this, where there's a lot of organizing the placement of certain towns in this case, that sort of thing. I think drawing a diagram really helps. So let's go through this one by one. So the first step is you read the question. Now, the line tells me that Kenmore is between Tenet and Maven, and the bus stops at Leonard Station right before Maven Station. So my question here would be, which one's closer, T or M that's closer to P? Because we want to know, okay, which way is what? So the way I would do this is I would actually draw up a few stations here. We don't really know how many stations there are, so I'm going to give myself plenty of space. I'm going to give myself plenty of space to know what I'm working with. So she's boarding it at Pinkerton, and she's going to the final stop is Westmoreland. So Pinkerton to Westmoreland. Now, Kenmore Station's between Tenet and Maven, and the bus stops at Leonard Station right before Maven. So because it says right before, I know it's L, then M. And I think that's important to know. Kenmore Station is 2 stops before Westmoreland Station. So that helps me because I can go, okay, 1, 2, and Kenmore Station is here. So right now, I've used this. Alrighty, and I know that Kenmore Station is between Tenet and Maven. So either Tenet or Maven is here, or, vice versa, Maven or Tenet. Now, this is where our second line comes into play. First line, sorry. Kenmore Station is between Tenet and Maven. So what's happening here is it means that because it's between Tenet and Maven, hang on a minute. Yep, I'm going to assume that Maven is over here because Maven is also linked to Leonard, right? So because these two are together, it's actually LM and these two that are together. So I really need 2 spots for M to go to. So what that means is Maven has to go here because there's the only place for Leonard is here because there's no spot for Maven to go over here. So that means Maven cannot go there, which means Tenet has to go in that spot there. And then let's move on to the last line. Gladestown Station is 2 stops after Norville. This actually is unnecessary and doesn't actually impact the question. So let's go back to the question. She gets off at the second last stop, and that is Tenet, this one here, which is why the answer is C. Alrighty. So moving on, the male height average is higher than the female height average globally. So these sort of questions, I like to call it a sort of, I guess these are the sort of questions where it's got a stem or like a sort of golden rule is another thing that I'd like to call it. And this is basically the sort of argument type questions where 2 people are saying something and you just want to see, okay, which one is, are either of them correct or incorrect? And when we go through the question, I know that, okay, my 2 people here are Nancy and Matthew. And the question is asking whose reasoning is correct. So I'm just going to keep note of a few key things that we see. So this is our little rule of which Nancy and Matthew have made their own opinions about. They could be right, they could be wrong. So here, I'm keeping note that they're talking about height and they're talking about something called average. Now, just a quick math lesson, I guess, is that the average is actually taking a look at the total divided by the number of different objects that you have. So in this case, they've taken the heights of every male and then divided by the number of males and done the same thing with the females. So Nancy is saying, my older sister is 1.65 meters tall, and therefore my little brother would at least be that same height after his growth spurt. So I guess when these sort of statements come up, you need to ask yourself, okay, where are these numbers coming from? Or where's this reasoning coming from? And by understanding how this correct or incorrect logic works, you can really apply that and see if they're correct or incorrect. And this is the same sort of technique I use for questions that are talking about like other sort of argument or logic questions that talk about, okay, what is the mistake that we can see? Alrighty. So, hang on, okay. So higher, right? So the male height average is higher. And I think because of that, this person assumes that my brother will be at least the same height as my sister just because the average is higher. But if we think about it, that's not always the case, right? Just because, I guess, on average, something is true, it doesn't mean it's correct all the time, which is why I believe Nancy is actually incorrect. Now, moving on to Matthew, no, that's not right. So this means that Matthew is actually disagreeing with what Nancy has said. And Matthew also mentions that your little brother should be at least 1.7. So this means Matthew is trying to say, no, 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 your brother should be taller than your sister because, you know, the male height average is higher than the female height. And just, it's basically the same reasoning as earlier. That's actually incorrect. So just because on average it's higher, sometimes, you know, older sisters are taller than younger brothers. And, you know, we can see this a lot of the time. Or I think the key thing to remember for this sort of question is just understanding that just because the average is a certain thing, it doesn't mean it happens all the time. Alrighty. So therefore, because both of them are wrong, whose reasoning is correct, it has to be D, neither Nancy nor Matthew. Okay. So, okay. Once there were two brothers, so there's a secret communication system which uses the following excerpt from a book. Once there were two brothers born 9 months apart in the same room of the same hospital in the same manner, the protected period of ill-timed contractions, the doctor in blue scrubs and white mask, da da da. Okay, so I think sometimes, and I've noticed not just, you know, mock papers that some of you might be seeing at this point, I think sometimes the best way that you get tricked in these sort of exams, whether it's reading or thinking skills, is, you know, they'll use hard vocabulary specifically to confuse your children. And I think one way you can get past this is just making sure your children read a lot, read widely as well. So it's not, sorry. And by reading widely, you can really sort of understand that, like, oh, you know, these are the vocabulary words that I need to know. And it just really helps your children with reading, sometimes thinking skills, and writing, in which, you know, you need vocabulary. But I think this excerpt is actually quite difficult. So I think just read through it, understand that, oh, you know, this is, you know, an excerpt from a book, nothing really special. But the whole idea is that this communication system is based off that. Now, because I guess, because it's using these difficult words, I'm going to do this question. I guess it's using difficult words specifically that I don't think your children will know. So I'm going to do this question assuming that, oh, you know, I don't know most of these words. And I'm just going to show you how I would approach these questions myself. So because this is thinking skills and it's a spy or a coded question, I just need to understand that, okay, this is an excerpt and I don't actually need to understand the words here. It's just, okay, we're going to make a code of this. That's all you need to know. So, okay, a coded message is, so this is like excerpt. That's all you really need to know for this. So, a coded message is formed by giving a sequence of numbers, and each number represents the letter in each position of that number in the excerpt. So 2 is an N and 6 is a H. So this is where the thinking skills part comes in, and you want to know, okay, 2 represents N and 6 represents H. And I would go back and I'd look for it. So, you know, okay, number 2, the easiest thing to do is go left to right from the first sentence, because, you know, that's what we usually do. We read left to right and we usually start at the top. So doing that here, I see the number 2 here. So 1, 2, I'm just going to write it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, that's enough for the question. So, there's a lot of letters in here, but I think for the purpose of this question, it's best if you go through and just use single digits. Okay, and 6 is H, which makes sense. Okay. So Sunny wants to code a message saying consort. Okay, so the first thing I'm noticing is that there's a C, and I see a C here. And that is how I know, okay, looking at the answer options, I want to eliminate because, it's a lot faster than finding every single letter. So this should be 3, which is how I can eliminate 2, C, because, it should be, it's actually an N. So, a 2 is an N, which is, consort starts with a C. Alrighty. So moving on, they all have a 1, 2, 6, something like that. So I'm actually going to start from the end now. And I see a 6. And as we know, a 6 represents H. And consort ends with a T. So this really can't be the answer either. And going backwards from that, I see a 9 and an 8. So, I can either test the 1, the 2, the 6, that sort of thing. But, I think it's better if we test the 9 there. Alrighty, so going to the 9, I know that the 9 should be an E. And consort, has an R. So because of that, I know that the answer should be B. So just to recap, my method for this is just elimination. And really just take a read of your answers before, and you want to use easy numbers or letters. So in this case, here I chose single digits instead of checking the 23, the 16, that sort of thing, just to be fast, because speed is quite important in thinking skills. Okay, so moving on. A turtle petting zoo has 4 turtles: Leonardo, Raphael, Michelangelo, and Donatello. I hope you understand where this reference is from. Alrighty, so in this question, the zookeepers must keep a close eye on what they enjoy eating. And the keepers found that if a turtle will eat crickets, it won't eat lettuce, and all turtles that eat crickets will eat chicken. So it seems a little bit confusing, written like this. So for me personally, I find that flowcharts really help me sort of understand that, what's the link? And I guess I like to call it a flowchart or a conveyor belt because it doesn't go backwards. I'll explain why in a second. So the keepers, I'll just break down how I come up with this flowchart. So the keepers found that if a turtle will eat crickets, it will not eat lettuce. So none of them will eat lettuce, and all of them that eat crickets will definitely eat chicken, so CH. Alrighty, so just a quick look at my system. This just means sometimes, or like, all of them. So, I've said that some turtles eat crickets, not all. And another thing is, oh dear, okay. This another one is just understanding that this is always, and this little arrow with the cross through it is none or never. And this is the sort of system I've developed for myself. Okay, and the way this flowchart works is that it'll start somewhere and it'll always move forward and never backwards, like a conveyor belt or a flowchart, whatever is better for you. So this question, I guess a very simple way of explaining this is that another sort of similar scenario is that all horses will have 4 legs. But does that mean everything that has 4 legs is a horse? No. Something with 4 legs, it could be a dog, it could be a cow, a cat, that sort of thing. So it could be anything. So just remember, just because it goes one way, it doesn't always go backwards that same way. So you really need to be careful with that. Alrighty, so let's go through the questions. Once again, I'm going to do a method of elimination because I find that's the easiest. So if Leonardo, a turtle, eats chicken, he will also eat crickets. You actually don't know because it doesn't work the other way. So similar to how not everything with 4 legs is a horse, not everything that eats the chicken will go back and eat the crickets. So I'm just gonna write that down, not the other way. So it can't be A. And B says if Raphael eats lettuce, he will not eat chickens. And once again, we don't know, right? It says if a turtle eats crickets, then it doesn't eat lettuce, but it still eats chicken. I don't know if, if the turtle eats lettuce, it won't eat chicken. Like, we don't know that because it's just not mentioned. And if Michelangelo eats lettuce, he will not eat chicken. Once again, same thing. I think over here, it's also important to note that, the main reason why this works is that this could exclude crickets, right? And, if both of these turtles did eat crickets, then of course that's correct. But here we don't know if they eat crickets or not. So that's why C, B, and C are wrong. And if Donatello eats lettuce, he will not eat crickets. And this makes sense because, as we know, crickets means no lettuce. And that is why the best answer for this question is D. Okay, moving on. The leader of a study group says any snacks that students bring to study sessions should be low in sugars and have high nutritional value. Once again, we're getting into slight technical terms here, which could be difficult for your children to understand, just because, nutritional value sounds like something from a health class, and low in sugars, I think sometimes it's just hard to sort of understand everything put together, especially in a high stakes test, such as high pressure test, such as the thinking skills exam. So I think for this, just remember that it's saying that, okay, snacks has to have these two conditions, low in sugars and high nutritional value. And we're trying to strengthen the leader's argument. So we're just trying to, okay, just back up the claim that it has to be low in sugars or high nutritional value, preferably both. And just keeping in mind that this is a study group. So you're really trying to focus. And yeah, I think another key thing is, always underline the keywords. Okay, so snacking can easily distract you from studying effectively. I think this is incorrect because it's saying it's giving us a reason why snacking is bad. So I would actually say this weakens the question, the argument, which is why please read the question, please underline your keywords so you don't make any careless mistakes. Sugars are extremely unhealthy in high amounts. This is irrelevant. See, the way they're trying to do this is that they're going for sugars and sugars. So please make sure you read the question, you read that key line carefully so you can understand what it means. So this is actually irrelevant. They've just thrown keyword sugar in to trick you. Snacks are an effective way of encouraging effective study. Yeah, this makes sense, but remember, it says that, it's okay. It's okay, but it's not the best because it doesn't actually mention that low in sugar or nutritional value. These are the key things we're looking for, which is why I think it's not the best answer, but we'll see if D is better. Now, D says nutrients help the brain to effectively study and retain information. Yeah, this is the best answer because once again, we've got that keyword, nutrition, and study, retain information, all these key things we're looking for. So moving on, Tristan has a line of 5 dogs. Each doghouse is assigned a different dog. Okay, so Reggie, Taylor, Nimbles, Jules, Marco, and it says kennels to the left, kennels to the right. When you're doing this question, please remember your lefts and your rights. I say this as someone who forgets, which one going left or right when I'm driving. That is a joke. But yeah, alrighty. So when I'm doing this question, I'm just going to keep in mind that, next to, okay, so I'm just going to quickly look at it. And hey, I notice that these two dogs, I think, these two dogs have no one left to the, so Nimble has no one to the left, which means this dog is on the very left. So Nimble is here. This is my step 1. Now, Jules also has no dogs to the right, which is why Jules is on the right, like very right. So Jules. Alrighty, this is my step 1. Now for step 2, I need to see, okay, which ones have one dog to the left or one dog to the right? And that's these two. I see that Marco, it's Taylor and Reggie. So Taylor has Jules to the left, and Reggie has Jules to the left, and Taylor has Nimbles to the right. So Reggie goes here, and Taylor goes here. Once again, please check your lefts and your rights so you don't mix this up. And then our last step is Marco, who should have 2 on each side. Done. So let's go back to the question. The question is saying, which dog sleeps directly next to Reggie? Reggie, this one here. And then we go through Marco and Jules. Done. So I hope this question makes sense. Alrighty. Question 8. Students at Jennifer schools were asked to complete a survey about their exercise tendencies in order to discover the general activeness of the students. Okay, the survey found that people who get higher grades have lower hours of exercise on average. Once again, keyword average, per week than people at lower grades. And Jocelyn's thing is that, people cannot be good at both academics and sport. And which one of the following sentences shows the mistake that Jocelyn has made? So this question is a very common mistake question. And one thing I've noticed is that all the mistake questions, this is a top tip, all the mistake questions are actually high modality, right? So one thing I've noticed is that the high modality words in this person's statement here is where you're going wrong. And that's where the mistake is. So the high modality here is actually cannot, right? People cannot be good at both academics and sport. Now, the first step is just have a general understanding of where the area of the mistake is. In this case, it's here. You can't be good at both academics and sport. And then look towards your answers A to D, because they'll be a lot more specific and get you the right answer immediately. And once again, eliminate the irrelevant answers as soon as possible. So A says it could be that people are exercising because they don't like studying. This is irrelevant because nowhere in the question does it mention being liking or disliking studying. There are actually some athletes who are very intelligent. This is also very irrelevant because it's saying higher grades and lower hours of exercise, and we're talking about students at a school. So athletes, it doesn't really matter what Usain Bolt can do at this point. And I think C says low exercise hours. It doesn't mean someone's going to be bad at sport. And can you see how it says, low exercise hours on average? So can you see how it links this low exercise hours here and the bad at sport over here? So I like it because it links the keywords that we're looking at, and it directly links to what Jocelyn says. I think it's a decent answer. And D says, low exercise hours could reflect that someone is overweight. Once again, nothing in the question talks about being overweight or not, which is why C is the best answer. Okay. Edward has a collection of 13 tokens, which are one of 3 colors, red, green, and yellow. On each token is a number from 1 to 9 inscribed. No 2 tokens are identical. And the key thing to note is that no number appears on both a red and a green token. So which one of the following statements must be true? So the key thing to note from this is that, we're first going to try and, sort out who gets what. So the maximum for the red and the green here, we're going to find what's the maximum different types of numbers that can come across. And I see that, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now, a red, the way this works is that no number appears on both a red and a green token. So we could have a little split like this, or it could be something completely different. Doesn't actually matter. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is, this is the maximum we can have for a red and a green. And then that means that our leftovers is all going towards the yellow here. So there's, that means that the maximum can be 9 here, which means the leftovers is going to be at least 4 if we max out the red and the green. So once again, we could just have a red 1 and a green 2, and the rest could all be yellow, but that means that there's 11 yellows. So Going through the answer, there must be at least 4 of each color token. No, that's incorrect, because I could just have two red and like the rest of this 9 be green, and 4 yellow counters, but A is incorrect. There must be at least 4 yellow tokens. This is actually correct based on the reasoning we have here. There must be at least 5 red tokens. So once again, these 3, it's very similar reasoning. So it's really important that for these questions, you really understand this sort of line of reasoning here. But yeah, I'll actually mark this out as a hard question. I think once you've understood this reasoning, that the maximum of 2 tokens can be, a certain like maximum of 9 in this question, and the yellow has to be the rest. Once you understand that line of logic, this question goes from hard to really easy because you now know this trick. I've seen this question quite a few times across different papers and different, tests, and they all follow this line of reasoning. So I think, please let me know if you have any questions. This is definitely a hard question until you know it. So I've marked all the questions I highlight in blue is something I would count as hard unless you know the trick. So moving on, Howard and his friends all went to an archery center and each had 5 shots at a target. Great. Tanisha scored 21. Tanisha is the first one we can see here. And then Gina missed 2 shots and scored 15. Wendy scored 25. All 4 zones of the target are worth a different whole number of points. The central zone is worth the most, and then, going outwards, worth less. Alrighty. So the way to do this question is just understand the nature of the zones. So I'm just going to, for teaching purposes, I'm going to highlight this right on the inside and blue on the outside. So that means I'm just going to refer to these by colors now. But please remember that red refers to the center one, blue refers to the middle ring, and green refers to the outermost ring. Alrighty. So from this, the key thing is that Gina missed 2 shots and scored 15. Okay, so for Gina, got 1 in each, right? So the first thing I'm going to look for is, okay, is there any sort of way that I can find the value of a single ring? So going through that, I'm going to see that, let's take a look at Tanisha. Now, Tanisha has, the same as Gina, which is all three here, and 2 on the green. So I'm going to do Tanisha minus Gino, and that's going to be 21 minus 15. So once again, please refer back to what we have here. So then we're left with 2 sort of green. Give me a second. But when I say green, I mean the outermost zones. So that's for 2 green is going to be equal to 6, which means 1 of your green is going to be equal to 3 points. That is important. Now we know 1 zone. So moving on to the next zone. Okay, so I'm just going to write here 21, 15, and 25 just for my own sort of thing. I noticed that, okay, there's 3 in a row here, and there's 2 blue. So the next thing I'm going to look at is Wendy minus Gina. And that's going to be 25 minus 15. So 2 blue is going to be equal to 10, which means 1 blue is 5. And that's another important one. And then for the third zone, we're actually going to look at the green. So third zone, Gina is equal to green plus blue plus red. And we're trying to find the red one there. So in this case, as we found, it's 3 plus 5 plus the red, which means the red should be equal to 7. And knowing this, we can find what Harold scored. And Harold is just red, 2 reds, and then a blue and a green. And this we know to already be 15 from Gino's score. And I know the red is 7, which means it's going to be 22, which is why the best answer for this, the only answer really, is going to be C. Okay, moving on to question 11. Alex, Polly, Justin, and Raymond are siblings, and the parents have told them that they won't be allowed to have ice cream for dessert if they haven't finished their dinner. The key thing to note is I feel like these questions use a bit of tricky English. Allowed doesn't mean it always happens. And other key things is just this. So they won't be allowed to have ice cream for dessert unless they have finished their dinner. So Alex is there eating his dessert. Therefore, he must have finished his dinner. No. Dessert, it's not ice cream. The key thing is we want to know if it's ice cream or not, but we don't know. If it was ice cream, it would be correct, but we actually don't know what's happening here, which is why the reasoning cannot be correct. Justin is wrong. Raymond is saying Polly ate her dinner, therefore she will have ice cream for dessert. But a very easy sort of counter argument for this is okay, there could be other conditions. And for example, what if there is no ice cream at home? If there's no ice cream, yes, you're allowed to have ice cream because you finished your dinner, but that doesn't mean you will 100% have it. And the key thing to keep in mind for this is that there could be other conditions involved before you definitely do eat ice cream. So, therefore, both of these are wrong. The answer is D. And another key thing is to know the difference between allow versus eat. And this is like, eat or do something. I've seen a lot of questions where they'll use the word allowed just to sort of trick you. But yeah, moving on, question 12. Some sets of 3-letter words can be ordered so that the last letter of each word is the same as the first letter of the next word. So, cat, pen, N, P, P, T, T. Okay. So, another set of words is shown below, but they're not in the same order. Okay, so my key tip for this is you start somewhere and you move back and forth to make sure you fit what you can. And then you look at the leftover words. So here, I'm just going to pick a random word. I see rut and tan. The first words I found. Okay. Rut and tan. Rut, tan. And I like to capitalize these words just so I know that I'm not, forgetting that it's the connecting letter. So rut and then tan means that nag also works. N-A-G. And then after that, I've got G-A-L. And then I've got L-I-P. Okay, I'm just running out of space here, so I'm just gonna move that backwards. Alrighty. So, and then we want to know nag. Okay, so I actually don't know where dip goes, and I need a missing word, and that makes sense because there's a missing word, and yeah. Alrighty. So that would mean we've got some word here, and then we've got dip beforehand, or we've got some word, and then we've got dip after. I'll explain that in a second. So I know that, we've got D-I-P, either here or here, D-I-P. And what this means is this word has to have an R and it has to have that P. So it's P something R. And none of these really have that. Moving on, this one should be P something D. And as I can see, pod has that. So therefore, this is wrong. This is correct. It has to be pod. And I think that's why for these sort of questions, you look before and after. Alrighty, and that's why the best answer is A. So in Atlantic City Casino, there's 5 different chips, each with different values: red, green, blue, white, and black. 10 reds are worth 1 green, 5 greens are worth 1 blue, 2 blues are worth 1 white, 1 black. Okay. So the good thing about this is that you just go forward. So 10 reds are worth 1 green. Always work through this systematically. So 1 green is equal to $1. Done. Tick it off as you go. So one green, 5 greens are worth 1 blue. So 1 blue is equal to $5. Done. 2 blue are worth 1 white. So 1 white is 10. Done. 5 whites are worth 1 black. So 1 black is $50, which is why your best answer is A. Alrighty. 14, actually, I'd like to correct one of the answers here. 14 is actually incorrect. The answer should be D, and I'll go through why. So I think the answers sent out to you say A. It should be D. So Yelena thinks we should all buy recycled white paper instead of regular white paper for printing. And that is the argument that I'd like you all to keep in mind. And then she goes on to say a reason why recycling is good. To aid environmental health, we should only use recycled paper. And the key word in this argument is that we're trying to weaken it. Recyclable paper is almost indistinguishable from normal paper to the naked eye. This actually strengthens it, so I can exclude it. B also does the same thing. It says it's cheaper. It strengthens the question, which is why it's wrong. And D says deforestation has detrimental effects for the environment as a whole. Once again, strengthens because it says, actually, not just, deforestation links back to here, but once again, these all strengthen, which is why I can eliminate this. And moving on to D, recycling materials for paper is extremely inefficient. So it's saying recycling is bad. And that is why D is the best answer. Okay, OzTag, touch football, rugby league are very similar sports which require the same skill sets. Anyone who can play OzTag can play touch football. Okay, cool. So Wesley is saying Seamus is on a competitive touch football team, therefore he can also play OzTag and rugby league. But just because, once again, it's that horse, 4 legs logic. And that's why this person's actually wrong, because we cannot use backwards logic. Similarly, with Terry, Holly cannot play OzTag, therefore she can't play touch football. Remember, we don't know if they're linked that way. Just because you can do something means you can do something else. Doesn't mean, if you can't do that thing, you can't do the other one either, if that makes sense. Which is why both of these people are wrong and why D is the answer. I am starting to rush a little bit now. I'm quite mindful that we've got 45 minutes left. So the string of symbols below only contain these 4 symbols. Any smaller string of 3 is called a block. And that is important. Okay. So just remember, the block is 3 together. Okay, so only one of these 4, we don't want an identical block, no identical blocks. Okay. And we want to add it on the right-hand side. So we really need to focus on this, on seeing this anywhere else. So I'm looking through the paper and I see that, okay, I see the exclamation mark and this. So this cannot be there because it says there can't be an identical block. So the method for this is elimination. Moving on, I also see this here, where we have that there, so it can't be D either. And I also see that, okay, we have this one here. So we can't have that, which is why the best answer for this is C. Okay, question 17. Samantha wants to convince her mother to come to a graduation assembly, and she's only going if at least one of her children gets an award. They're difficult to earn, and you're given to the most athletic, responsible, academic, and most involved. And you only get it to students at the school. So we're trying to find what is not possible. Okay, and once again, elimination is really going to be the best help here. Samantha is a single child, but her mother still attends the graduation assembly. Yes, because if Samantha herself gets an award. And similarly, conversely, Samantha has 3 siblings and her mother does not attend it. Yeah, because if none of them got an award, yeah, her mother won't come. And Samantha is the most athletic sibling, but just because she's the most athletic sibling doesn't mean it's in the entire school. So just keep that in mind. C is incorrect. Because yeah, her mother could not, just because she's, you know, the most athletic sibling, she might not have gotten the award, and thus her mother might not have attended the assembly. And moving on to D, D is the best answer because Samantha's brother is the most responsible in the school. And remember, the most responsible gets an award. So her mother not attending doesn't make sense, which is why D is the best answer. Pangolins are unique creatures who like to feed on small insects. Biologists observed pangolin feeding behavior and made an interesting discovery. Some break down cow patties and turn them over to feed on termites, and only those who haven't found it in 5 days. So moving on, Louise is wrong because just because they only haven't found food in 5 days, break open the cow patty, you don't know, like, they could enjoy the termites at some other point. You don't know if termites are only found in these cow patties, which is why that's wrong. Christina's actually correct because the most amount of times a pangolin can break open cow patties for food in a week is twice. Yes, because you've got Sunday and then you've also got Friday or Saturday of that same week, which is why, because Christina's correct, the best answer is B. So in a game called Tossed, points are represented by different colored marbles that are worth 5, 7, or 15. And I have 3 sacks of each, filled completely with either 5, 7, or 15-point marbles. Each sack has the same number of marbles. Now this is a key point in this question. And the combined point block of our 2 sacks is 110. Focus on this. So that means that the combo of any of these is a factor of 110. So here, I'm just going to color code it. 5 point, 7 point, 15 point. So here, 5 plus 7 is equal to 12, which is, not divisible. Not like 110 is not divisible by that. Moving on, 5 plus 15 is 20, which is once again not divisible. And then our last one, 7 plus 15 is 22, which is divisible, right? So 110 divided by 22 is 5 marbles per sack. And then moving on, what is the total? So that means that there's 5 marbles per sack, sorry. Yep, same number of marbles, so there's 5 marbles here. So the other sack has to be that 5.1, and then you just do 5 times 5, get to 25. The answer should be A. Okay, question 20. Artificial intelligence is an up-and-coming technology that can be applied to many fields in the real world. And this is your argument here. Because once again, it's highlighted there. So which of these statements, the rest is a bit of background information. For the interest of time, I'm going to skip this. If you don't understand the argument, please type it in the chat and I'll get back to it at the end if we have time. So we're trying to weaken the above argument and we're trying to say, okay, it cannot be applied to many fields. It cannot be applied to many fields. Okay, so going through, A is incorrect because it's saying it's developing quickly and is readily accessible. This strengthens. And remember, we're trying to weaken the question. Developers are extremely rich. This is irrelevant. And many industries have rejected. So already I'm noticing industries, right? This is what, we were looking for. They've rejected the need for AI as they find it too excessive. I like this. I'm going to hold on to it, see if D is okay. Now, D says practices that require extreme accuracy can utilize AI. Once again, strengthens the question, which is why C is your best answer. So moving on, at a reading club, every member of the club gets a single vote on the books to be read, and you have to use the one that's read for that session is the one that gets the most votes. 31 members, 6 books to choose from. Now, Kathleen says the books that we will read needs to get at least 6 votes. That is correct, because the whole idea is that, okay, we can get 5 for every single book, but that last, because 30 divided by 6 gets me 5. So, an equal split, but remember, there's 31, which means you can do 5 of 5, and then that's 6. It's still the majority. So because of that, Kathleen is correct, and Sunny is incorrect. If a book gets 15 votes, we will definitely be reading it, because my question is, okay, sure, one book gets 15, another book gets 16. 16 is still bigger than 15, which is why it's wrong. Alrighty. So therefore, the answer is A. So please read the question carefully. I think a little bit of maths here and understanding would really help. Okay, my favorite question of today. Alrighty, so I'm going to start off this question by saying I believe the question is incorrect, and I'm a bit broken, perhaps would be a better way of saying it, and I'm just going to go through it. So these sort of questions is quite straightforward. They want to tile it. The numbers are hard though. So this person wants to tile a floor. I'll actually mark this question as quite difficult. Alrighty. So the rectangle has a side length of 0.4 each way, and then 0.45. Her bathroom is a rectangular room which has measurements 5.05 by 6.15, and the last row and column of tiles must be cut to fit in. So we want to find the tile in the corner opposite from where Lucy starts. So I'm going to assume, what that means is, okay, she's going to go this way, all that, and we want to find this final tile here. Now that's the question, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to work it out. So the best way to do this is we're going to start off 5.05 and 6.15. Alrighty. So what I'm going to do is 5.05 divided by 0.4, which gets me 12 and 5/8. So, and I'm going to do the same thing for the 6.15 divided by 0.45, because remember, our measurements are this. And that's going to get me 13 and 2/3. So my next question is, okay, what's this overlap? Now the overlap shows what the dimensions of that cut tile have to be. It should be 5/8 of 0.4 and 2/3 of 0.3. So that would mean that the last row and column of tiles must be cut to fit in, and the measurements of that should be 5/8 and 2/3 of this original tile. Now, the reason why I'm using fractions here is that we really need to check the sort of how it all compares to that 0.4 and 0.5, and I feel fractions are better because I know that 3/4 is from here to here, or a half is exactly like this. And by visually using fractions, we can sort of eliminate A, B, C, and D. Okay. So just keeping in mind that, okay, 5/8 is just going to be somewhere like, slightly past halfway, and 2/3 is going to be something like this. So really, we're looking for something that looks something like that, what I've highlighted in blue there. Now, one of the problems, hang on, let me just highlight it as well. Okay, I hope you can see that. And the key thing is, I think, so we're just going to look through and see what we have. So just going through this question, A, I noticed that, the length looks correct. It looks roughly to be 5/8. So yep, that's nice. But I noticed the height is incorrect. This looks more like 1/3 of what we have there. So I would say A is not a good answer. Moving on to B and C, I think this is pretty straightforward. Both the dimensions are wrong. So both of these dimensions are wrong, which is why it's not the best answer in my opinion. And with D, honestly, it's the same reasoning as A, where, this makes sense, the length, but the height doesn't. It looks more like 1/3 or maybe even a half of the height, but not that 2/3 that we were looking for. So to give you a quick example of what I would assume a correct question to be like, for example, we have 30 centimeter height of tiles. How many can fit? How tall will the 1 meter wall height be? How many tiles can fit there? And the way you do this is you do 100 divided by 30, which gets me 3 1/3, which means this, I've got 3 full tiles and 1/3 of that cut tiles, and that is the height. I'm happy to revisit this question later, but I believe this question is incorrect just because the height isn't there. I hope that makes sense. I'm ready to move. And just because the question, sorry, just going back, the question is asking what the tile in the corner opposite. So we're looking for this tile here, which means we really want this exact tile there, but none of this has it. I hope that makes sense. I'm going to move on. If you have any questions, just ask me at the end. Alrighty, so moving on to question 23. The whole, argument here is must be able to deadlift at least 1.5 times their weight. Linda's able to lift her own weight, which is 75. Therefore, if she loses 25, she should be able to qualify. And just keep in mind, we're trying to find the mistake. And I think the first thing I'm going to think of is, okay, where do we get that 75 kilos from? And the reasoning is 50 times that 1.5 we saw earlier gets 75. So we're going to go through the answers A to D, and I'm going to eliminate the weird ones. Excuse me, sorry. Linda must gain weight instead of losing. I think this is quite irrelevant. Yeah. It's difficult to lose weight in such a short amount of time. Same thing, it doesn't, whether it's hard or easy, it doesn't matter. It doesn't link to the question. Weight loss may cause a loss in strength. This is actually quite important because if you lose your strength, if she loses her strength, she can't lift 75 anymore, which means if she loses weight, she still will not be able to qualify if she can't lift that much. So C looks like it's pretty good. All gym goers should be able to join clubs. Okay, that's irrelevant, which is why the best answer is C. 24. This is another question I would consider quite difficult. Okay. So the following diagram shows the switches and which light bulbs they're connected to. When a switch is changed, so for the purpose of this question, I'm going to name each switch P, Q, and R, just so we can see what's happening. When all these switches are off, then all 4 lights are off. Alrighty. So I'm just going to draw out some switches here. Just to color code, red means they're on. So first, they're all going to start as off. Okay. And then I want to turn switch P on, which takes a look at bulb 1 and bulb 3. So, okay, bulb 1 and bulb 3 are going to turn on. These 2 are going to turn off. Now let's take a look at Q. Q looks at bulb 2 and bulb 4, which means, okay, not only do we have the previous lights on, we've got the second and fourth light on as well. And moving on to R, okay, so we're turning R on directly after that. And R is actually going to turn off 3 and 4 because it's connected to that. And yeah, so I'm just going to say this is the start. Alrighty. So because of that, this is just, just so we understand what's going on with the lights, and we're going to move on, trying to eliminate what we can see there. So when which one of the following statements is false? It's impossible to have all 4 lights at once. No, just P and Q together can do that. Oh wait, sorry, it says which one is false, which means A is actually our answer. It's actually possible. So once again, just a reminder, please read your question. So it's impossible for light 3 to be the only light on. This is actually true because no matter if you put P or R together, you can't actually have light Q by itself. It's impossible for light 2 to be the only light on. Yes, because it's connected. It's connected to light 3. It's always connected to 1 or 4. So it's likely that it won't be on by itself. It's always going to be connected to that. And if all switches are on, only light 1 and 2 will shine. Yes, we can see that in there. Okay, 25. I've got 4 double-sided cards, each with the letter printed on both sides. So the first step is just start with any of these. Okay. And then you're going to try and see, okay, which one of these letters is definitely behind something else. And I'm going to look at stum. Sorry, it's tins, not tink. So I'm going to look at stan, T and S is there, which means U should be behind I, because the whole idea is no letters repeated across the 4 cards. So the next thing I'm going to look at is the third one. Here, silks. So I see the S, I've seen the S before, I've seen the I before, which means T or N. They've either got the L or the K. I'm not too sure yet. Okay, that's that. I've just looked at all these cards. And then B, U, L, K, S. Okay, so we've got those 3, which means B has to definitely be behind that. But the key thing is, we don't know that. So which of the following words can definitely be made using the cards? I'm going to eliminate. Now, stub is incorrect because the S and the B are opposite, as we can see. And for B and C, it's the similar reasoning, because my thinking for B is, what if your L or T are opposite each other? If they're opposite each other, you can't make the word, and you don't actually know if they're opposite or not, which is why B doesn't work. And for C, my same thinking is, okay, what if your K and your N are opposite each other? Yeah, and because of that, you don't actually know. However, A definitely works because, hang on, S, U, L, K. Or you could do the, oh dear, you could also do the K, hang on, sorry, I've just done the wrong one. You could do the K and the L, or the L and the K from the other one there. So it works either way. Alrighty, moving on to 26. Small musician, all right, I'm going to skip the reading. So sorry, just, in the interest of time. So the tour will be cancelled if he has shows in 15 states or less, and he has to have 2 in each. So as long as he has the tour will go ahead. This is wrong. Now this maths is done by 2 times 15. But, for example, Taylor Swift, if she comes here, she only has like 2 shows in Sydney, 3 in a different town, but that doesn't, she might have like none in Western Australia. Just because she has 6 shows doesn't mean she's covering all the states. It could just be all in Sydney, something like that. So this is actually incorrect logic. Now says if the tour is cancelled, must be because he didn't have enough shows in enough states. But remember, you have to have at least, you have to have that number of states as well. So it's not just enough states. What about shows per state, right? So less than 2 per state. That could be another reason as well, which is why both these people are wrong. D is the best answer. So moving on to 27, 4 friends are comparing how much they liked each of these 3, and what's the maximum number of 4 friends that could have liked raspberry the least. So what you want to focus on, raspberry the least, you want to focus on those like the confirmed people who actually like raspberry greater than like, whatever else it is. Because you want to find the maximum who like raspberry the least. You want to find who, is confirmed to not have that. And then you just do 4 minus that number. And going through, I see Aisha like raspberry more than cola, which means she cannot like it the least. And Sophia liked raspberry the most, which is why Sophia could not have liked it the least. So 4 minus 2 is equal to 2. The best answer for this is B. So moving on to 28, she's cutting 2D shapes out of a piece of paper, and she wants to find it under the glass table. Now, a quick trick for this is that you just want to flip it sort of upside down. And when you flip it upside down, just keep in mind that this L shape actually ends up looking something like this, like further away from the table. So you've got that moon shape there, and then you've got that L shape. It's a very rough drawing, but drawing can help. So you want that rough shape, that moon, and hang on a minute, yep. So you want that moon first, which is why this is wrong. This is also wrong, it's flipped. A moon, and then, yep, that's great. So we're trying to find the difference between C and D. And I'm noting that, okay, this is different, right? So we really need to look at how this shape flips across. So this shape is here. And another key thing I'm noting is that it's pointing like that, which means it has to point that way when we flip it across the line. So always look for these key features. You can also see that there's a bit of a curve there. Draw that in if you want. And the only one that really does that is C, whereas D has it the opposite way. And putting all this together, C is the best answer. Okay, so if you struggle with this question, please revise visual reasoning. It's a very popular topic. And honestly, for a lot of it, you just need to practice as much as possible. So for question 29, students are usually, so key thing, usually means not always, they're expelled from private school if they've repeated bad behavior. And the key thing is the only exception is when you've got extremely bad attendance rate with no acceptable reason. So Kirsten is saying the principal said she had to explain him despite him never getting a bad warning. So therefore, he must have had extremely bad attendance rate. So he didn't fit the first criteria, so it's the second one, which is why this person is correct. And Fern is saying, okay, if you have an acceptable reason here, therefore, as long as you've got good behavior, the opposite of bad, you won't get expelled, which makes sense, which is why the best answer here is C. So for question 30, the most effective way of preventing airborne diseases. So I'm already noting a few terms that might be more popular since COVID, but I think please just revise the vocab here. I think selective is definitely quite a bit easier than the vocab here. It's just to train you. So the argument in this question is that you must practice proper hand washing. Most effective way of preventing airborne. Airborne means, something spread in the air, particularly after sneezing or coughing before touching a face, food, other people. Mitigate. Mitigate means prevent. So once again, it's another difficult word. So please, once again, revise your vocab. Pathogenic microbes. So once again, these are a lot of technical terms you don't really need to understand. The whole idea is understand the argument. In this case, practice proper hand washing, because that's the action that they're trying to convince you to do. And we're trying to weaken the above argument. So, alrighty, we're trying to weaken it, which says, okay, get rid of it. So, proper hand washing involves utilizing hand soaps. This is irrelevant. Nothing in here mentions soap. B says hand washing only removes most pathogens if you do it for at least 20 seconds. Once again, it's irrelevant. Nothing here says, you have to do it for 20 or not. It's not weakening anything. Not all pathogenic microbes can be killed by hand washing. Yes, it weakens, but once again, it says not all. So, some still can be killed, right? And whilst it does weaken the argument, it doesn't weaken it that much to a great extent. D is actually the best answer because it says research shows that masks is the most effective method. And masks is a completely different thing to hand washing. It says, okay, including this line basically means that, it doesn't matter if we hand wash or not, we should just use masks. And that is why D makes the most sense. So Albert is experimenting with the digital clock, and this is the current date. Now, he's entered the 1st of February. So, and it's the same date when he turns it upside down. So 01, 02, and then you've got the year. It doesn't really matter. Now, once I turn this upside down, the year, it doesn't matter what it is. That just becomes your date, month. Date, month. Doesn't really matter. Now, what matters is how the 0120 turns out. That becomes, 2010. So let's take a look. The current date is 2023. And this is his birthday, 2010. So we're going to do 23 minus 20, 20, sorry. 2023 minus 2010, which gets me 13, which is why the best answer is A. Alrighty, question 32 is actually quite difficult. I would, spend a bit more time trying to understand it. Alrighty, so I think that understanding this question is actually quite difficult because, and honestly, if I was doing this in a test, I would skip it and come back to it later. So all the questions I've highlighted blue here, skip it, come back to it later. So the key thing to understand here is that wrong means that you go to your left, whereas right means you go to the opposite corner. Alrighty, so here, which one could not be asked as the fourth question? So for Jordan, I can see that Jordan, Jordan could be wrong. Oh, sorry. Milton answers the first question. And we're trying to go to who could not be asked the fourth question. So we need to sort of work this out. So Milton could be wrong. If Milton is wrong, it goes to the left. So in this case, that's Nora. And then Nora is also wrong, goes to Oscar. And then if Oscar is wrong, it goes to Jordan, which is what we want. Sorry, the question is asking which one could not be, so we're going to ignore A. B is the answer, so I'm going to explain that at the end. So with Lynn, so with Lynn, once again, Nora could be wrong, Milton could be wrong, Oscar could be wrong. Milton, then we go to Nora, and then Oscar could be correct, which leads to Lynn. It doesn't really matter if this fourth person gets it correct or incorrect. This is just for the last color, doesn't matter. So for Nora as well, so we want Nora to be the fourth person. So we're going to start off with Milton, and I think if Milton is correct, we go to Jordan. So Milton is correct, and then we go to Jordan. And I think we can go left another time, which gets me Oscar. And then after this, Milton, so we go to Jordan, who's wrong, and then we go to Oscar, who is, give me 1 second. Yep, so 1, 2, 3, yep, and then Nora could be wrong. So Oscar could be wrong, which leads to Nora. And that is how C and D work, and there's just no way to get B. So I really think the best way to do this question is understand this whole setup here, understand this, which, in itself is quite hard. Circular tables are already difficult to understand. And then adding on incorrect and correct is similar to, those dice questions where they've got rules like, if my, if I roll an even number, this happens. If I roll an odd number, that sort of thing. That's what I mean when I say rules. When we add all this together, it does get a little bit more difficult. Alrighty, so moving on to question 33. If you don't understand this question, I'm happy to come back to it later. Just for the interest of time, we'll go through the other questions first. So for question 33, Melanie and George often play scissors, papers, rock to settle disputes. There's no skill involved, so they each won around half the games. So we're trying to find the mistake here. Just because you win it doesn't mean that, just because you win around half, it doesn't mean you're always going to win half, right? So they must have played 14, and we're trying to find the mistake. It's definitely in this term must. So for question option A, winning doesn't mean necessarily exact half. This isn't the mistake here. It doesn't answer the question, right? Because my thinking is just because she won 7 games doesn't mean George, George could have, been really lucky and won 93 games out of 100. So I think that's the mistake we're looking for here. B actually says that either player could have been incredibly lucky or unlucky yesterday, which is what the mistake is. Melanie and George don't have disputes that often. That's actually irrelevant. And D, scissors, paper, rock can be cheated. Once again, irrelevant. Alrighty, moving on. Jessica and Tyson use a code to communicate very often. They've got a rule, and this is what it is. So, to which Tyson replies, what's his favorite month of the year? Now, the key thing I'm noticing is look for patterns. You can either tell me what the pattern is, or I can give you a fast way. Now, this fast way is try to figure out what this U is, because I'm noticing that we have different letters here, right? And that means that the first letter, as long as we find what that U stands for, we're fine. And I see this U here in the two-letter word, and the only two-letter word starts with an F for February. So that's a fast way. Now, for the others, this is similar to what we had in GA. Or for those of you doing scholarship, I think there's a similar section there too. So we're gonna, the code here, if any of you don't know it, it's actually A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It's the opposite letter. So I'll just write it out here. N, O, P. So as you can see, it's all the opposite if we turn it into a sort of wheel. Oh dear. Yep. P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. Okay, but I think honestly the best way is just do it the fast way. Find the U and move on. 35. Lara's raiding an ancient tomb, stumbles across a positive door. She needs to correctly arrange 4 slabs, and once again, each one has a different carving. So the mouse should be to the left of and directly next to the lion. So mouse, lion. So once again, just keep note or write it down. Okay, and these are your different placements. So the rabbit is on one of the ends. Okay, so from that, okay, I know the rabbit should be here or here, I'm not too sure. And the bear is not on either end. Okay, so the bear goes here or here, I'm not sure. So you've got a yes or no question to ask. Is the bear next to the rabbit? I mean, this doesn't really help because I know the bear should definitely be next to the rabbit. Is the lion somewhere on the bear's left? Okay, so just to make my life a bit easier, I know that because my rabbit and my bear position is kind of fixed, your mouse and your lion should be here, or you should have your mouse and your lion there. And that's really what you want to know. You want to know if it's your rabbit and bear on the left side or the right side. Okay, so B is the best because if the lion is on the bear's left, we know that, okay, if the lion is on the bear's left, it has to be this option here where it's mouse, lion, bear, rabbit, or if it's no, it's the other way around. And for C, is the bear somewhere between the rabbit and the lion? That doesn't really help us because we know that, it always has to be between them. And is the bear somewhere between the rabbit and the mouse? Doesn't really help us. So moving on to question that's where the answer should be B, sorry. So moving on to question 36, beavers often build dams, lodges in lakes, rivers, and large streams. Due to the way their lodges are designed, they require a water level of at least 0.6 meters to prevent their underwater entrances from being blocked by ice during the winter. If the water level is not sufficient, only then will they build dams. And then after the dam, they'll construct lodges. If they don't require dams, they require lodges straight away. So I think one thing to note is that there's a lot of repetitive terminology here, such as lodges, dams, and beavers. So just be careful of that. So we're trying to find whose reasoning is correct. Now, Lala was saying the lake is 0.7 meters deep, and therefore there must be beaver lodges in that lake. Once again, you don't know. There could be other conditions, right? And Tina says that lake is this meter deep. There must be no beaver dams in that river. Yeah, that's correct, because as we can see, the water is deep enough for possible lodge, for like lodges straight away. Which is why Christina's correct, Lala was wrong. The answer should be B. So question 37.
Sally runs a cookie store which makes customized cookie shapes. To cut the cookies, she has a special machine where she presses 2 buttons and it will cut a cookie with an outside shape and an inside shape. So that's one thing, right? We've got our out shape and then our in shape, and each button corresponds to a different shape. She presses the green, then the red. Then it creates the following cookie. So green plus red gets you a hexagon and, a cross. Now, the purple then the yellow creates the following cookie there. So she presses the yellow button, which is mentioned here, and an orange button, which has not been mentioned yet. So we don't actually know the shape that it creates. So therefore, it has to be a new shape. And it cannot be a pentagon or like the plus shape, the cross. Okay, so moving on, A says that it has to be a star and a circle. Oh, and sorry, just going back to the question, it says which one could not be made. So I see the circle. The yellow can either be a heart shape or a circle shape. It could be on the inside or the outside, we don't know. So going through that, yeah, I see the circle. That's the yellow shape. And yeah, this star could be that orange shape. So yeah, this one makes sense, which is why it cannot be the answer. Remember, the question is asking which shape cannot be made. Now B has that circle. Yeah, sure, that could be that red shape there. However, I've seen this plus shape before. I've seen this plus shape over here. And once again, this can only either be a green button or red button, not the orange button that we want, which is why B cannot be made, and it's the answer. I'm going to go through why C and D do make sense. So once again, that circle is there. Once again, it could be that yellow button, and that that circle could be that orange button we've never seen before. And as for D, once again, the circle could be that orange button, and then the pentagon, the octagon could be that yellow button there. Alrighty. Please let me know if that doesn't make sense. So for question 38, in a chess tournament, there's 4 placement heats, and every competitor competes in 2 of the placement heats. Anyone who finishes in the top 3, or at least one of the placement ones, will progress to the finals. Now, Linda beat Tommy in the first placement heat. Therefore, if Timmy qualifies in the finals, so will Linda. And we're trying to find the mistake Chester has made. So the mistake here is this high modality word. Yeah. And moving on, the whole idea is if he qualifies, so will Linda. But my thinking is that Timothy could have done better than Linda overall. Because in at least one of the 2 of the placement heats, if he did better than her in that second heat compared to the first one, Linda might not go through. So I think that's where the mistake is. Now we go through and we see, okay, what's going on. So which one of the following sentences show the mistake? A, Linda and Timothy might not have been in the same heat for their second heat. This is actually irrelevant. It doesn't matter if they've been in the same heat or not. B says this guy, Timothy, might have performed better in a second heat compared to his first. Yeah, that makes sense. It's what we discussed earlier. So similarly, Linda may have performed better in her second heat compared to the first heat. This is actually, not the mistake. It's the opposite of what we're looking for, which is why that's wrong. And for D, there may be chess professionals. I think this one would be the first one I eliminated because it's quite irrelevant. Okay. So moving on to question 39. This is another hard question. I'll go through it bit by bit. So, okay, it is 8 p.m. So for those of you who do have to leave, feel free. We'll go through this. We'll go through the rest of the session. Okay. This will all be recorded. Okay. So for 39, 5 cars are parked at the garage in the car spot labeled 1 to 5. They're either hatchbacks or sedans. And I'm going to, label this as H or S. They each painted 2 of the following colors: red, black, which are, red as K, silver, or blue. The car in spot 1 is red and blue. So I'm just going to call this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And once again, just remember your lefts and your rights. This is spot 1 to 5. I'm going left to right. So the car in spot 1 is red plus blue. I'm noting down the colors as I go. The car in spot 2, so I'm going to tick this off as I finish. I've written that down. Car in spot 2 is black, and blue. Okay. The car in spot 3 has silver paint. Okay, so it's silver plus something else, we don't know. All the cars are hatchbacks unless they have red paint. So in this, I know that all the sedans have red paint, which means that, okay, this must be a sedan. All the cars which are sedans have blue paint. So that means that a sedan, all the cars are hatchbacks unless they have red paint. So therefore, if it's got red paint, it's a sedan. All the cars which are sedans have blue paint. And from this, I know that a sedan must be red and blue. So therefore, because I know red paint is definitely a sedan, and sedans also have blue paint. So therefore, the key thing here is understanding a sedan has to have red and blue, which means this black and blue has to be a hatchback, and this thing with silver has to be a hatchback. So therefore, this is all we know for now. I'm just going to go through options A to D and see from what we know, what could be true. Just keep in mind that I don't actually know what 4 and 5 is. So only one of the cars has black paint. We actually don't know this because I don't know what's happening with the car 4 and car 5. With option B, it says there's more sedans than hatchbacks. This one is actually unknown as well, because once again, what's happening to spot 4 or spot 5? Those two could just be, red and black, you don't know. The majority of the cars have blue paint. I'll come back to this later because it is the answer. D also says the car in spot 2 is the only sedan. 2 is actually a hatchback. So therefore, A, B, and D are wrong. So the best way to answer this sort of question is through elimination. Now, going back to option C, the majority of the cars have blue paint. Now, this is actually correct. I'm going to circle the ones that we know have blue paint. So these two have blue paint. Now, it says all cars which are sedans have blue paint. So sedans, like all the sedans have blue paint. That doesn't mean a hatchback might not have a blue paint. So once again, if it's a sedan, I know it's got blue if it's a sedan. But once again, if it's a hatchback, it could have blue, or it could just not have blue, which means, the 2 out of the 3 that we do know both have blue paint, and the others don't, regardless, it will still either have blue paint or just be a hatchback that doesn't. But yeah, once again, the hatchbacks cannot have red paint. So let me just give me 1 second. Hatchbacks, unless they have red paint. So once again, this is definitely a hatchback. So it can't have red paint. So using the matchup of K of black, silver, and blue, we know that the majority of the cars have to have blue paint. Okay, which is why C is the best answer. And for our last question here, question 40. Okay, so for our last question 40, Mrs. Francesca runs an orphanage with a certain number of kids. Yesterday at lunchtime, she observes that 15 were wearing jackets, 10 were wearing hats, and 19 were wearing glasses. When she looks closer, she realizes all the kids wearing hats have jackets on. She also realizes that none of the kids wearing jackets are wearing glasses. So starting off, I know that, I've got 15 with jackets. And in there, I know all the kids with hats. So 10 have hats and jackets. And then none of the kids wearing jackets are wearing glasses. So it's just 5 with jackets only. And then those that are wearing glasses is 19, like with glasses by themselves, and 2 with none. And we want to find how many in total. So total is actually going to be equal to this 10, this 5, hold on a minute, yep, this 19, and this 2. And when we add all that up, 10 plus 5 plus 19 plus 2, we should get 36. Yes. 36, which is how we get B. Alrighty, so that is it for the questions. I'm just going to take a look at the question and answer. Yep, so I'm just going to re-explain some of these questions. So give me one moment. Alrighty, so the first question we're going to re-explain is question number 10. Give me one moment, slowly getting there. Question 10. Alrighty. I hope everyone can see this. I'm just going to erase my working out just so I can restart this question. Okay, so from what we can see here, each of the targets have a different value, and the one on the inside is worth the most. So I'm just going to start off and just remind myself that each of them are worth different points. So I'm just going to color code it just for the sake of the question. Alrighty, and I'm just going to write out what each person got. So I've got a 21, oh dear, sorry. I've got a 21 here, Gino only got 15, and Wendy scored 25, and I don't actually know what Howard got, which is what the question is asking. Alrighty, so, okay, so, let's start off with what we know. I can see that Gino scored 15, and Gino scored in all 3 zones. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see other sort of people who have scored in that same zone. So there's these 3 here. So you've got Gino. Gino is equal to a red plus a blue plus a green. Now I'm going to take a look at what Tanisha got, because Tanisha, I can see Tanisha got the same 3. Tanisha got like the same 3 there, but also got 2 green. So basically got 2 green plus what Gino got. So putting that together, I know 21 is equal to 2 times whatever that green amount is plus 15, which is why your green amount is equal to 6. And 2 greens is 6, and 1 green is equal to 3. So that's what matters there. And then moving on, I can see that Wendy got like the same 3 as Gina, and then 2 blue. So I can say that Wendy is equal to 2 blue plus what Gina got. And putting that together, I know Wendy got 25, which is 2 blue plus what Gina got, 15. And using subtraction, I know that 2 blue is equal to 10, which means 1 blue is equal to 5. So I'm just going to color code that just for ease. Fortunately, I'm running out a bit of space here, so I'm just going back here. Blue is equal to 5. And then we need to find what that final red thing is. So I know that, you know, we know what our blue is and we know what our green is. I know that the blue zone is 5, and I know that the green zone is 3. And Gina got 15. So red plus 5 plus 3 is 15, which means that red is equal to 7. So going through, I now know that a red is 7, green is 3, and blue is 5, which means Harold got 2 red plus blue plus green, which means you got 2 times 7 plus 5 plus 3, 14 plus 8, 22. I hope that made sense. I'm going to move on to question number 12 now. Okay, so I'm just, for the ease of everything, I'm just going to get rid of my working out here. Okay. So this question is basically, first you need to understand the question. And it says some sets of 3-letter words can be ordered so that the last letter of each word is the same as the first letter of the next word. So as you can see, cat and tap, the last letter of cat is T, and the first letter of tap is T. So you can see there's a similarity there. Okay, so we've got that set of words there, and one word is missing, and the order is not ordered properly. So we need to sort of start with what we know and then work backwards or forwards. So first, like, order what you can, right? And I'm just trying to find letters that start and end with the same letter. And in this case, I see rut and tan together. So you've got R, U, T. And that leads to a T, A, N. So now we're looking for a letter that starts with N, and I see nag. And then I'm looking for something that starts with G, which in this case is gal. So as I go through, I'm going to cross out the words I use, just so I know that I'm not going to use it again. And that leads to lip, L-I-P. Done. So our leftover word is dip. So that would mean D-I-P has to go here. Just give myself a bit more room there. So we've got D-I-P, which means this second word has to start with the end of that first. So P something R. Continue with that there. Or we're going to start off on the other end, where we've got some word here where we start with the P, and then we have D-I-P, dip. So this last letter has to be P something D. So here are my two choices. I've got either P something R or P something D. And I'm going to go through the answers, and I can see the P something D. I can't see anything else starting with a P, which is why these are wrong. And that is how we get that answer. Yeah, if you do understand every question, Nicole, feel free to leave. Okay. Also 20, okay. So I hope this makes sense. If it doesn't, just type a message in the chat again. Okay, so question number 22, sorry, 19 is the next one. Okay. So for question 19, I'm just going to rub out the board. Yep, okay. So here in this game, you've got different marbles worth these points. And the key thing to note is that each sack has the same number of marbles. Okay, so going through each question, they've got either 5 points, 7 points, or 15 points. And the key thing for this is to understand that you want, so you've got the combined point total of 2 stacks is 110. So you want to find which ones add to 110. So here we've got the 5 point, the 7 point, or the 15 point. So just to make it a bit clearer, I'm going to color code so you know how I'm getting this combination. So 5 plus 7. I'm trying to find the combo, and I know that the combo has to be a factor of 110. So 5 plus 7 is 12, which is not a not like 110 is not divisible by 12. So moving on, I've got 5 plus 15, which is equal to 20, which is also not divisible. And then our last one, we've got 7 and 15, which gets me 22, which is actually divisible. So then we're going to do 110 divided by 22 to find out how many marbles we have per sack, which is 5 marbles per sack. So let's go back here. The same number of marbles in this case is 5 marbles. So going back, we've used up our 7 point here. Because this is our combo, we've used the 7 and the 15, which means we have 5 points worth in the other sack. So we're going to do 5 marbles times 5 points to get me 25, which is why A is the best answer for 19. Okay, so the next question after this is question 22. To the person who asked this, I just wanted to remind you that this question is actually a bit broken. So the answer options are actually incorrect. There's like no correct answer here. A to D is not correct. So I'll try to explain how I would approach the question, but there's not much of a correct answer for this. So yeah. Okay. So first we're going to try, give me a moment. Okay. So first we need to read through and understand the question. Okay, so Lucy wants to tile her bathroom floor with patterned tiles like the one shown below. And it's a rectangle with those sides. Okay, so going through, I can see that, 0.4 by 0.45. So write what you know first. It's 0.4 and 0.45. This way. I'm doing this because it's quite evident that one side is bigger than the other. And the rectangular room is 5.05 by 6.15. And she's tiling from one corner in rows. So she's doing it like this. This is her starting point. And the question is asking what, the corner opposite from where she started tiling. So that's this tile here. We want to see how it looks like. Okay, so moving on, we're trying to find that out. And the best way to do that is just try to see how many we have. So the measurement is 0.4 by 0.45 for a room that size. So I'm going to divide it by the length first. So 5.05 divided by 0.4 gets me 12 and 5/8. And then for the next one, 6.15 divided by 0.45 gets me 13 and 2/3. So the reason why I'm using fraction is just to keep in mind that this fraction is basically the sort of more you need, the dimensions of like that last tile. So it's that last tile dimension. Okay, so we want to find what that looks like. So we want 5/8 of that first sort of, here. And what that's going to be is it's going to be roughly past 5/8. Now, the reason why I use fractions is because it's, hang on. Okay, so the reason why we use fractions is just to see the proportions. It's easier for me to go 2/3 of the full tile rather than go 0.3, because then I might I guess I might make a careless mistake and then think that, it should be like 3/10. So I try to use fractions in questions like this. Okay, so alrighty, and yeah, just to go back to your question, I think the most recent one, the actual selective test won't have any mistakes. I think this is just an error. Okay, so yeah, it should be 5/8, so this big, and then 2/3, so that should be roughly around here. So it should be a tile that looks something like this, and that's just 2/3 of the tile. Okay, so going through, I can see that B and C can already be eliminated because they're too small. Both the height and the length, are both wrong. So when I look at A, I see that the length is correct. It looks, very similar to what we have there. And for B, the height of that's actually incorrect. Okay, so, alrighty. And then same thing here with this and this. Alrighty. The height there is correct. Sorry, the height in D is incorrect, but the length is correct. So just going back, also just keep in mind that it's more intuitive to take a look at, just look at the measurements here, compare it with the fractions, and then answer the question. Unfortunately, as you can see, options A to D are incorrect. So moving on to question 25. This question, you just need to compare the different tiles. So, alrighty. So I'm going to start off with what we have here, tins. So one side is definitely T-I-N-S. I've used that. Now the second tile, I want to see how many use, so the second set of tiles, I want to see how many use the most letters there possible. So I've got T-N-S. So I know that the U has to be opposite that I card there. And for the third one, it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to go with silk because that does have quite a few of the letters we've used already. So I see the S and the I, which means the L and the K have to be underneath N or T. We don't know which one yet. So now we know those letters and I know U, which means that B has to be opposite the S. Alrighty. And because of that, just keep in mind that we know this, but I don't actually know what's behind T or N. So just going through, D can be eliminated because S and B are opposites, therefore that's wrong. Now for B and C, I know that, the question is asking which one can definitely be made. Now I can eliminate B because, I don't know if L and T, they could be opposites, right? And in case they are opposite, then we know that, they can't go together. So because we don't know, we can't tell. And for C, same thing. I don't know about K and N, which is why C is incorrect, which is why A is the best answer. Okay. And 29, second last question. Thank you for your patience. Alrighty. So for this question, students are usually expelled if they have repeated bad behavior warnings. So the key thing here is, repeated bad behavior warnings. That's one condition. The only exception is if they have extremely bad attendance rate with no acceptable reason. This is the second thing. So it's 1 or 2. So Kirsten, the principal, said she had to expel Nolan, despite him never getting a bad behavior warning. Therefore, he must have extremely bad attendance rates. So going through, I think this person is correct because, this means he never got a bad behavior warning, so he doesn't have 1, which means he should have had the second option because it's first or second. Now, Fern says if no one provide acceptable reason for missing school, so that means this person did not satisfy the second condition of no acceptable reason, the principal won't maintain him. Yeah, so if he has good behavior, he doesn't satisfy the first condition, which means he won't get expelled. And going through that last question, I think 32. So for question 32, they're standing in a circle facing inwards. Alrighty. So for this question here, alrighty, 6 students are standing in a circle facing inwards as shown below. Okay, so they're playing a game involving trivia questions. The one who gets it asks the next question, but if you get it wrong, you have to ask the person to their left. If you get it right, you must ask the person opposite, which is how I got this rule here, which is, wrong is to the left, right is opposite. Milton answers the first question. So no matter what, we start off with Milton here. And depending on whether he gets it right or wrong, and subsequently, they also get it right or wrong, we can tell who, we can figure out who gets the fourth question. And this is what we're looking for. So when I'm going to go through why the other options are correct, and then we'll go through. Yeah, so I reckon because it's a hard question, I really recommend skipping it and coming back to it as a form of test preparation. So for Jordan, Jordan is actually can be asked a fourth question, and for this we start off with Milton being wrong. So if Milton is wrong, he's going to ask the person to the left, Nora. Nora has to get it wrong as well to ask Oscar. And once Oscar, does it wrong as well, we get Jordan. And that is how A works. Now for C, Caitlin is the answer, so I'm going to explain why C is wrong. So let me just work this out. So for Lynn, I can see that, once again, Milton starts off with being wrong, which means Nora does it. And then we're going to get, next person, Nora, to also get it wrong. And then Oscar has to get it right, which leads to Lynn. So this makes sense. And for the last one, we have, give me 1 second, we have Milton actually getting it correct, which means we ask the person opposite. And then this person gets it wrong, which means you ask the person to their left. Their left is actually our right. So in this case, we get Caitlin. So Nora, then Jordan. And then after that, Caitlin actually has to get it right, because as we can see, Nora is directly opposite. And that is how you get that there. And that is how you get the other three incorrect. And yeah, so that is how B is the answer, because you cannot have Caitlin being asked the fourth question. I hope all this makes sense. But yeah, if everyone's, if there are no more questions, I'm happy to finish up right now. I'll stay on for 2 more minutes, but yeah, if there's no other questions, that is it for this week's monthly challenge. Yep, have a good night. Have a happy holidays.